Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska today. And I want to thank our show sponsor first before we go into anything, Gungerstein for Senate. It's because of Gungerstein for Senate sponsoring the show that we were able to get in all the nooks and crannies of Alaska, which is very exciting. So our hats off to Gungerstein for Senate for sponsoring the show. Thank you so much. She was actually on the show yesterday. For folks interested in hearing more about her, she's a nonpartisan candidate running for U.S. Senate. You can check out our show yesterday. She's got a couple critical words for our President Joe Biden, which is always an interesting thing to listen to. And man, I am in, for those of you, again, living under a rock or a stone or in a small closet and you've been trapped in there for about a week and a half, Donald Trump is coming to town, which is very exciting. I am in Anchorage right now. I'll be doing some live streams to see if there's anybody in line. We've been told that people camp out there 24 hours in advance. I won't be doing that, but I'll definitely be talking to people if they're out there camping out 24 hours in advance. So if you're in line today and you're listening, I will be there soon and we can have a live stream conversation. And for folks wanting to go to the Trump event, you're going to want to show up early. The event is tomorrow. And, if you show up 2 hours before the event, you ain't getting in. If you show up 3 hours or 4 hours before the event, I bet you're not going to get in. You got to show up super early. And it's free. They're basically free tickets. You can buy a ticket for, I think, $220 or $50 that guarantees you a spot. But if you just wait in line, they're free, which is kind of exciting. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, who's a friend of mine, City Council Member Richard Best of Palmer. How you doing today, Richard?
Hey, John, I'm doing wonderful. And if you happen to take a look at my photographs on Facebook this morning, Palmer's daybreak over the mountains, just gorgeous. You can't beat it around here.
That's awesome. Well, you can't beat much in Palmer. It's pretty awesome. I think I got you beat with a couple things in Nikiski, but Palmer is a beautiful city. And I think it's home to one of my favorite kind of like secondhand thrift shops that's right underneath that water tower there. They got a pretty awesome it's like if anybody watched that Picker show on AMC, it's kind of like that. And Palmer's a great place to live and be from. So welcome, Richard, to the Must Read Alaska Show. You are on the City Council for Palmer. How did you first get involved in politics? You've been an effective leader in Palmer, and you've also worked for some legislative folks. How did you get involved in politics in the first place?
Like a lot of folks, I accidentally stepped into it, and you get it on your shoe a little bit, and then it's kind of around you. No, it's just you get involved in your local stuff, something that's going on that affects you, that you hear about somebody doing something that maybe is going to affect your neighborhood. And that's how it happened with myself. The subdivision development was coming in, and there was a trail back behind us, and started talking to some neighbors. All of a sudden,
it always in the middle of politics. The trail back behind you.
Absolutely.
So you ran. Was this your first segment in office, or have you been on the city council before? And how has it been? How have the races been since you've won?
Politics in Palmer has changed a bit. So 2003, I was appointed to city council, had been on planning and zoning for some period of time, and then ended up stepping down. There was a little bit of controversy, and then got reelected in 2005, I believe. But back then, you could run just based off of your involvement in the community, just word of mouth. Never even put up a sign for my first 3 campaigns.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
small
walking
town
around.
gospel right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Just word of mouth and just going around talking to folks and being involved and stuff. And there you go. And people just look to see that that's what they'd like to have in a representative.
So you've been on there for a number of years. Do you have any one or two things that you're pretty excited about that you were able to accomplish while you're on the city council?
You know what? For the most part, I'd like to say that if people aren't complaining about it, you're doing a pretty good job. I think that sometimes you get into some situations where you're going to have a lot of conversations going on, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a bad job. But I would say that making sure that Palmer, the government, is out of people's way. It's not growing. It's staying in its lanes. It's efficient as it can be, and it just gets out of everybody's way.
Well, Palmer, if people have been following politics in Alaska, they might have noticed this last year or so, Palmer got a little woke in their politics. And can you tell us a little bit about, give us kind of the elevator talk, maybe a little more in depth than that, of what led to the recall and what the recall was like and why you think it was successful?
Okay, so we've had some recalls in the last several years that have been kind of cult of personality, almost personal attacks. Somebody didn't like a decision, but not necessarily somebody doing something against the law. And we have the Open Meetings Act, which basically states how local government meetings are going to be. Oh, my lights are flickering here.
Oh, it's all good.
Hopefully it's not affecting you.
No, it's good.
Give me a switch real quick. Okay, there we go. Anyhow, the local politics happens, and the question was...
So the recall effort. So tell us about why the recall took place in the first place, kind of what that looked like and why it was successful.
Back to it was based off of a legal question as to whether or not conversations that were germane to the city politics had happened in a private closed group. It wasn't open to the public. It's been something that with Facebook and all that kind of stuff, messaging, emails. I mean, back to when Sarah Palin was governor, we had the Open Meetings Act that was coming into, and people wanted to have the email strings that were happening with the governor of Alaska at the time. So communication, how we get the communication of our governance is important. When we start getting into situations where the public is outside of a public discussion, that's when it becomes sticky, because we would like to all be aware of what our local government is doing.
So did these folks allegedly do this, or did they fess up to breaking the Open Meetings Act?
Well, several people had been notified that there was this group happening, and there was people inside the group that noticed that some of these that 4 individuals of the council was involved in it, and so they started taking screenshots, and then that information got to members of the public and members of the community, and we started raising questions. And at that point, it was notified, people were informed that they were doing things, and it became an immediate, not about discussion about what had happened, but about who was bringing the information or how did they get the information. And it became about shoot the messenger.
And so this probably got brought to the attention of the clerk, in the form of a recall petition. And my guess is because they got recalled, that the clerk approved this recall petition for some reason or another.
Well, we did do an investigation. The attorney did find that his belief was that if it had gone to court, that they would have been found guilty of breaking the Open Meetings Act. But the caveat in that is that a lot of folks are saying that they weren't convicted of anything. Well, it's because nobody sued the city for anything, which means that there couldn't have been a verdict. So it's not that, it's not like your drunk driving charge just got dismissed and it just never happened. Well, no, you still were drunk driving through a residential neighborhood. It still happened. Okay. Whether it gets dismissed or not doesn't make any difference. It still happened. That's where we were at this point, was that it did happen. And at that point, because we didn't have it wasn't a guilty verdict, but then it was the public could have that information and went to the voters. And then they got to determine that they were going to be removed from their office.
So it sounds like somebody had some meetings that they probably shouldn't had. An investigation did happen. And this professional attorney ruled that if it would have been, put forward through, somebody suing you or whatnot, that they would have found evidence that would find them guilty. And so it got thrown on the ballot as a recall. And everybody involved in those meetings got recalled, is my understanding. Is that correct?
So originally, when the investigation had happened and it came out, it was right before the last election. And one of the individuals was not reelected. So then the recall actually went, and instead of going through all four of them, only went to actually three of them later on. But the three of them that got recalled had opportunities that they could have said, yes, this is what happened, and there could have been a process for going and being censured or something like that. That never came about, and there was never an acknowledgement that what they had done was wrong.
Yeah,
I think that's probably what resonates the most with the citizens of Palmer, is that there has still been no, yes, we broke the law. And whatever the penalty is, fair enough, but there was never an acceptance of that they did anything wrong.
Yeah, I think sometimes a slice of humble pie can do somebody some good. It's everybody screws up, everybody makes mistakes. This sounds like a pretty pre-thought out, organized mistake, but I still think, just like you said, you just got to say sorry about that. You still let the chips fall where they may. You still may get recalled, but these people still have to go buy milk and pump gas in the community. And man, I would want to be on the good side of folks in Palmer rather than the bad side. Do you think folks in Palmer has this been an aha moment or a wake up call for folks? The people that got recalled seem to be maybe a little more liberal than the average person in Palmer. Has this kind of stirred up conservatives to get out there and get their butts off their couch and go vote?
It was really intriguing. So this was a citizens involved recall. This was the people. This wasn't the elected officials, me, being involved to strip somebody of, that was an opponent of mine, of their seat. This was the citizens. This is the grassroots. This is them going out and getting signatures and gathering all the information. I think that is very important to understand, because that is the people taking power back into their own hands.
Yeah.
Now, with that, I had some legislation that recently came about that is going to come about in a future meeting to potentially send it to the voters, about some language that would prohibit those who have been recalled from seeking an office again. So for a period of time, maybe it's one cycle or two cycles, a cooling off period.
It's called the cool down time.
Exactly. So if you think about voter initiatives and referendums, the legislative bodies cannot touch those for 2 years. It's a cooling off period, because it takes such an effort for the public to get involved, and it's an emotional thing for them, right? If the public is actually having to strip politicians from their power, there's some emotion behind that.
Yep.
We need to have some cooling off. Okay, so, but that's what we had heard. We had heard from a lot of folks that they didn't want these individuals from being able to get back into the process again. So I put language out there, and in our statutes, my opinion, because it's in our statutes and our charter, that statutes the tools that the legislative body has to affect. There's some folks that believe that it should go to the voters, and I also believe it should go to the voters for it to become a permanence, because then the legislative body can't retract it 2 years from now. So that would be the important part of that. So I would hope that we can put it to the voters to have them choose whether or not we would let people who have been recalled from holding office again.
Well,
and I'm curious whether or not it could be retroactive.
So this piece of legislation that you're bringing forward, if it gets passed by the city council, then it goes to the Palmer voters to vote on. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. It would go to the next regular election, but there is a election process that we're going to be going through. So we've got mayor, and then a whole bunch of council seats are going to come up available because we've had all the recalls. So we're going to have 5 council seats and a mayor seat.
Wow. You're going to have a busy election for Palmer.
Man. And, you know, we've had some other controversy. You had spoke about woke moments in Palmer, and we have had some woke moments, you know, the Braided River controversy, renaming of colony days that was reversed. Those are Chamber of Commerce issues. And, you know, people stepped up. People stood up, businesses felt the impact, and they said, wait a minute, you know, the way that the conversation happened, the way that the determination, the process, it was very much giving the feeling of planned, covert for reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it was or not.
Yeah. One of the things I love about living in Nikiski is, you know, most parades, you know, you talked about parades, most parades are like owned by maybe a government agency or a chamber of commerce or the marketing tourism arm that's funded by the government. In most communities, that's the case. In Nikiski, we just put together a parade. We don't have any official, you know, sponsorships or, you know, assembly person spearheading it. It's just a bunch of folks in Nikiski that put it together. Now, we didn't do it this year, but we've done it in years in the past, recently. And I think that oftentimes people forget that the power's in them to do stuff. If you want stuff done, go do it. And I think this is a prime example of this little name change that they tried to pull off to see how far they could push the envelope. People realize, well, crap, we can make a difference here. We can come against this and make sure that it doesn't happen. And they were successful at it. So for folks that are listening, never underestimate the power of you. The reason why a lot of things happen in Juneau that you don't like is because we're not able to show up. And there's a certain power in folks showing up and banging on the doors and asking for what they want. And so just never forget that. So my question to you, this is, Richard, how does somebody make a difference in today's political world? You've seen some firsthand examples of that with the recall effort, but let's say you're this everyday stay-at-home dad or soccer mom or whatever it is, and you have 17 things you're trying to do during the day, including, you know, hockey practice and hockey games and football practice and taking the kids to school, going to band, going to some play, and you only have this much time for politics. And how does that person make a difference?
First off, vote. When you go to vote, take a friend. Right? Yeah. Right. The participation aspect, you know, all of us are always busy. It's called sacrifice for a reason. You have to sacrifice a little bit. But there's a lot of information that's out there. Folks like you got organizations that are out there. We've got women's groups that are out there. You've got PTAs, and a lot of these have digital connections, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, that kind of stuff. You can follow that, and you can take little samples of what you need. You know, if you just only got a little bit of time, you can get involved. You can be out there. You can participate. You can get in your, you know, groups. Pay attention. So talk to friends. You know what? And Representative Carpenter, who I used to work for, great man, and his staff down there, Kendra, he has really talked about having the uncomfortable conversations, that we have gotten away from having uncomfortable conversations in our churches, with our friends. You know, everybody's always told to not talk politics and religion. I think that we have to start having those conversations. You got to be okay with disagreeing with me. Yep. And we're going to be okay with it. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's, I've talked to a number of guests that, you know, a lot of our listeners would probably disagree with me, but I think that, or some of our listeners, I would say, would disagree with me, but I think it's important to be able to sit across the table from somebody who doesn't see even close to eye to you in the political world or the church world or whatever world it is, and have a discussion with them without screaming at the top of our lungs and, you know, protesting their business because, God forbid, they believe some different thing about health than you do. And I think that's kind of what we've come to because of the mainstream media. When I say the mainstream media, I mean like the big four networks that are on TV 24/7. All they're producing is screams, yells, violence, you know, protests with blood pouring on their faces, you know, people dying in the streets. And so we get this sense that we literally I have to combat you if you're ever going to hear my viewpoint. And I think that's just not a great way to do it. Nobody, you know, the layman's term example I shout about that is somebody shows up to your house, banging on the door, screaming in your face about how dumb your lawn is, or, you know, something, they don't like your flowers. Are you going to sit there and listen to them and change your flowers out or change the color of your lawn? No, you got your neighbor screaming in your face and jamming on your door. You're going to tell them to get lost. And that's pretty much how the other team is going to look at us if that's our strategy with them and how to interact with them. Have to have some compassion, have to have some humility. And I think we've lost that, unfortunately, but I don't think it's too far gone. I think we can turn the old wooden ship still and figure out how to have a little slice of humble pie. So, Richard, who's been a hero of yours? Your political career started 2013. You were appointed, but before that, you're on the Planning Commission. So you've done a lot of public service in your over the last 20 years. Who's been somebody that you looked up to as maybe a hero, or just somebody that you've looked up to over the years?
So many over the years. You know, one of my first political affiliations at all was Alfred Willis. Alfred Willis was the chief of Nikiski Fire Department, and he is actually in the Pioneer Home here in Palmer. And he was a Reagan appointee in California, and was, you know, Reagan's guy when Reagan was governor. And then he later came to Alaska and ended up running the Nikiski Fire Department and helped you know, develop the escape route and all that that's out there, and really made Nikiski Fire Department what it is today. And then Chief Harris was behind him. They helped really build that. But he was probably my first political hero, I guess.
I bet he had some stories coming from. Was he like a head of the fire stuff in California, appointed by Reagan when Reagan was governor? Or
yeah. So the exact title that he had, I don't recall. I actually have a black and white copy. So I did an interview of him in 5th grade, and did a story, and I've got a picture of the story and him in with Reagan and in California. So that was kind of a big deal.
That's a cool memory.
Yeah.
So what's next?
I was going to jump in there real quick. My next little piece of politics was in high school, going to a school board meeting when they were talking about cutting football from Kenai High School. and we got up, and members of the football team got up there, and I'm actually on the record giving my 2 cents to the school board.
Nice.
And so, I participated back then.
Well, now the Kenai Peninsula Borough's got a rock star superintendent, and we are, we're pretty blessed on the Kenai Peninsula. Seems like a lot of superintendents these days are way left of center. And our guy here on the Kenai Peninsula is pretty awesome. Even though, again, I don't agree with all the stuff he does, he sits down and listens to all sides of the issue, which historically superintendents are horrible at. So we're blessed here on the Kenai Peninsula. We continue to be blessed. You should move back. We would gladly accept you back to Nikiski. I appreciate you spending time with us today, Richard. So what's next for you on the gamut? You've been on the city council for a number of years. You've been chief of staff, I believe, for Ben Carpenter. Do you have any political plans in the future, or are you going to lay low for a while? What's the plans?
Yeah, so some people know, some people don't. I took a little family medical leave. I've been dealing with some injuries. Just took a little me time, kind of reset a little bit. I'm looking to come back at 100%, and where I'm going to go and land, I don't know. It's a third career kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to reinvent myself or drop a dime somewhere else and help out in some other part of the state. But wherever our community needs us, you know how it is.
Hey, we might need a mayor in Nikiski soon when we incorporate. So
there we go.
Well, I want to thank Richard Best for joining us today on the Must Read Alaska show. Richard is the city council member in Palmer. He was first appointed in 2003, and he's been elected several times since. Former chief of staff for Representative Ben Carpenter, who's my favorite rep in the whole state. He is a rock star representative. He's low key, high class, and does exactly what he says he's going to do, which you can't ask for much more than that. And so thanks everybody for tuning into the Must Read Alaska show. You're going to want to check out the Must Read Alaska page today, especially tomorrow. Today, I'm going to try to do some live streaming from the Trump event if there's folks in line. But tomorrow, I'm going to be definitely live streaming from inside the event. And we got some special things planned for tomorrow. So you're going to, if you can't make the event, let's say you're in Fairbanks or Bethel or Southeast Alaska or even Kenai or Anchorage, and you can't make the event because of you don't want to travel, or you don't want to wait in line for 10 hours, or maybe you did wait in line for 6 hours, you didn't get in, you're going to be able to check out some real awesome snippets of the event tomorrow on the Must Read Alaska Facebook page. So stay tuned to that. And until next time, from somewhere in Alaska, I'm John Quick signing off. Have an awesome day. Thank you so much, Richard.
Hey, John.